Good evening from CBS News headquarters in New York.
In the early days of mass media, there were 4 news programs and a handful of national papers. Today, there are hundreds of thousands of YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok channels, and thousands of accessible online newspapers that claim to tell you the truth of what's happening in the world.
Precision matters, facts matter, the truth matters. Here's the truth.
All of this noise has forced the more self-aware among us to ask, how do we know that we're right about anything we believe is true? It's not that the question didn't come up previously. There have always been moments that have shaken us to the core, forcing us to re-examine what we thought was 100% accurate. When Galileo told us that the Earth revolves around the sun and not the other way around. When the quantum physicist told us that a particle can sometimes act like a wave. When doctors in the 90s told us that fat was bad for us, then changed their mind and said it was carbs, and then changed their mind again and said it was processed food. You get the idea. There's a fancy word for this called epistemology, which essentially means the study of how we know what we know. The real philosophers have challenged whether we can know anything for sure at all. Maybe blue is red, but our eyes are fooling us. But assuming for a moment that we're not completely wrong about everything, it is still quite difficult to figure out what's right in such a fragmented information landscape, whether it's in politics and science or even more mundane things like understanding another person's point of view. So is there a rigorous way of training ourselves to see past the illusion and discover truth? Here's the Mensch Sense take. The galaxy brain sense-making thinker Daniel Schmachtenberger outlines 3 main categories of thinking that allow us to have a better understanding of reality by challenging our innate human biases. We begin with third-person epistemology. In other words, gaining an objective understanding of how the outside world works. Some would call it science.
Third-person epistemology is what we can call the philosophy of science, right? How do we make sense of the objective third-person world? We're going to measure it, do repetitions on our process, experimentation, etc.
Okay, easy enough, but then there's something more difficult. In order to know the world more fully, I have to have multiple perspectives on the world, not just my own. If I know that there are 3 sides to a particular argument, then I only fully understand the topic if I can articulate all 3 sides equally.
The second person side, though, is our ability to know what each other think and feel. Can I argue your side as well as you can, where you have nothing to add? And rather than do it just as a rhetorical process, can I actually inhabit your perspective to get what the world feels like from your perspective?
This one's crucial because we see such a breakdown of dialogue in the current society where people simply talk over each other, and nobody actually understands the other side's argument or where they're coming from. Imagine how much more constructive debates about abortion or immigration would be if we could do that. And the final category is not objective science, and it's not understanding someone else, it's understanding ourselves.
And the first person is, can I come to understand my own self, which means my own cognitive biases? But there's a first-person sense-making for me as the sense-maker that I have to pay attention to that is affecting everything.
If I don't realize my own baggage or biases, then I can't possibly have a clear lens with which to see your perspective or even the scientific one. So if these are the 3 ways we need to train ourselves to think more clearly to get a better grasp of reality, is there an educational system that does that? The answer is yes. It's called the Talmud. The Talmud is the official record of the Jewish oral law. It consists of thousands of pages of dialogues, debates, and transmissions of the interpretation of the 5 books of Moses into the details of practical Jewish observance. Anyone who has studied the Talmud knows that it is unlike any other textbook they've ever read. Instead of absorbing information, the reader is asked to challenge and participate in the conversation. In so doing, the Talmud trains a participant to grapple with these 3 epistemic categories. First, the Talmud presents logical arguments that must be tested for consistency within the Torah and whether it stands up to practical application. That's third-person scientific knowledge. Second, the Talmud often presents 2, 3, or even 4 different opinions on one particular debate. The student must be able to articulate all of the opinions in order to fully understand the topic. That's second-person subjective knowledge. Finally, the process of learning Talmud is meant to be practiced in pairs, called chavrusas. Two people study the text together so that if one person reads it incorrectly, or with built-in assumptions, the chavrusa can challenge the partner, and together they will arrive at a more accurate reading. Here, every student learns to be aware of any hidden biases that he or she possesses. Many beginner students of Talmud have wondered why it is necessary to pore over ancient transcripts of rabbinic debates. Why not just skip to the codified law so that we know what to do? Daniel Schmachtenberger provides an excellent argument for why the Talmud is so important. Talmud teaches not just what to do, but how to think clearly and comprehensively across multiple categories. In a world of so much fragmentation, polarization, and lack of self-awareness, perhaps the solution is as simple as getting more people to study ancient rabbis arguing with each other. And that makes mensch sense.